Good afternoon, everybody. This is Christophe Jeannin from Keystone. It's just about 2 p.m. Central Time. I think most people have logged on. If not, they will shortly. Thank you first of all, for participating in this webinar. Thank you for participating in this webinar. On the phone with me today, I've got Doug Cartwright. I met Doug about 8 years ago when he was with Lamson & Sessions, and Doug has been kind enough to offer to participate and share some examples of some growth initiatives that he has been involved with during his career. So Doug, thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
In terms of what we'll do today, we're going to talk about how to grow your top and bottom line. In terms of what we will do, I will make this presentation available to anybody who wants it. If you can just shoot me an email after the webinar, ask me for the presentation, I will respond and send you an attachment which will have the entire presentation. So with that as background, I'm not going to go through Doug's background or my background. I believe that was included in the invite. I think we'll just get started and go through this presentation. We've scheduled, I believe, 30 minutes, including answering a few questions at the end. So we'll try to go through this pretty quickly, and off we go. So, as we get started, the question we're going to try to answer for you all is to let you know who this person is. In the past, when we have shared this picture with people around round tables or panel discussions, several hands in the audience have gone up. People have tried to guess who this individual is. And some of the answers we've gotten in the past is it's Mr. Goldratt, the author of The Goal. For those of you who know the book, and the answer is that it's not Mr. Goldratt. It's not Alan Greenspan, and it's certainly not me after elective surgery. But hopefully in a few slides you'll know who this is. In terms of when we get involved with clients and start to talk about top-line growth and try to get into specific growth initiatives, one of the things we typically start with is a few very simple questions. Unfortunately, the fact that the questions are simple doesn't mean that the answers are necessarily simple. And so the questions are listed here, and it's really at a very, very high level, at a strategic level. We ask our clients, what gives you the right to win? And that includes things like, how do they compete? How do they win? Why do they lose when they do? And do their customers understand the specific value that they offer, which goes well beyond a specific product or service, obviously. The last question there is also, do all the employees or associates in the company also understand what value the company truly provides? And so we usually start with that discussion. Importantly, we try to understand how that answer would be different if you look back in time, 3 or 5 years. And then very importantly, how that answer will be different 5 years from today. And typically looking forward is where companies get into some pretty interesting discussions around how will the rules of their game change going forward in their industry with their competitors. So the assumption is, before you get into any discussion on specific growth opportunities, that these key questions have already been answered and that the company, your company, is able to articulate what those answers are. Once you've done this, so answer these strategic level questions, then you can move on into much more tactical questions. And this is a pretty broad list. We're not going to read any of these or walk you through each of these, but it's to give you a sense of the breadth of the types of questions that we believe need to be answered when thinking about growth opportunities. I'll just maybe highlight a few of them. The first one on the left-hand side here really talks about looking at the last 5 years, the last 3 years, this current year, or next year for that matter. What has happened to your business from a revenue point of view, and specifically from a key customer point of view. So for example, what has happened to your top 10 customers? How has your market share evolved over the past few years? Do you know and understand the share of wallet that you currently own within those top 10 key accounts? So again, important questions, a lot more detailed than what we saw in the preceding slide. Other questions can deal with things like down here on the third column, bottom of the third column. Can you bundle goods and services with what you currently provide to your customers to create a sales advantage, to differentiate your offering? and then you got a whole other laundry list of questions to answer. This usually is fairly daunting for clients, and this is really companies of all sizes. It's a long list. There are other questions beyond this list here, but it gets pretty daunting in terms of how do you structure these questions, how do you figure out where to focus. And so this is what takes us back to this gentleman. His name is Igor Antov. A lot of consultants specifically use what he came up with, which is a product market growth matrix. It's a very simple tool, a 2x2 matrix, which is what we're going to walk you through today. But very few people know that he is the gentleman who actually invented it way back in 1957. So the tool's been around for a long time. Let me walk you through it very briefly, and then we'll get right into the examples, which is really what we're here to talk about today. So this is the tool here. It's a 2x2 matrix. On the x-axis, you have the products and services that your company currently offers. And then on the y-axis, you have the customers, markets, or channels that your company currently competes in. The way this works, on the lower left-hand side, the green box, that would be where we would see your current products and services offered to your current markets or customers or channels. And markets could be, you can think of that as a geography, for example. So that would be your current business would be in that green box. If you move over to the right, this would be where you're offering a new product or a new service to your existing customers. You move up to the left, the yellow box, this is where you would take your current products or services, but try to offer them to a new channel partner or to a new customer set or to a new geography. And then over in the far right-hand side, the red box, this really would be betting the ranch in essence. It would be offering a new product or a new service to a new customer or a new market. So really something where the company today has no expertise in doing so. So that's the matrix at a high level. There's a school in Switzerland called IMD who's done some market research in terms of the probabilities of success within each of these growth options. And this is what this slide shows here. So the lower left-hand side, what we're referring to as market penetration, that understandably has the highest probability of success, between 50 and 75%. And the reason for that is fairly simple if you think about it. That is based on leveraging an existing track record. So it is selling more of your current products and services to your core markets or customer sets. And so that is leveraging something that the company has a track record of doing. Therefore, it usually has the highest probability of success. To the right-hand side, the next one is a new product introduction to your existing customers. Again, they're fairly decent probability of success with 45 to 65% rate. And that, in essence, what that says is you're taking a new product or a new service and you're selling it to an existing relationship. Somebody that you have already established a relationship with, somebody with whom you already have a track record where you've proven the value of what you offer. So it's, relatively speaking, fairly straightforward, or at least it should be. The market development side is a little bit more difficult with a lower probability of success, 35 to 55%. And that, if you think about that, it's taking your existing offering, but taking it to a new market. And oftentimes, new markets have a lot of question marks, a lot of uncertainties. It's maybe a channel that we don't have experience working with. Maybe it's a new geography that carries a lot of questions that need to be answered before we can succeed there. So it's a little bit more complicated. The last one, which is really a box we're not going to talk about today, is the company diversification. And obviously that one has the lowest probability of success of all four growth options. So this is the product market growth matrix. This is how it works. And the neat thing with this matrix, which is very simple, if you think about the broad list of questions we shared with you earlier, this is the same list. And what you can do with a matrix is you can take a look at the questions. For example, the first one that we covered that talks about customers and what has happened to customers and what needs to happen with that customer going forward. That one is one that you can easily slot into the green box, the current products and services and the current customers. And you can go down the list this way. If you go to the extreme far right, and you look at I think it's the third from the bottom, has your company successfully added revenues or capabilities through acquisitions? That's something that could fit in either of the four boxes, but certainly in the red box. A lot of company diversification efforts are executed via an acquisition of a company that operates in a new market selling a new product or service for your company. So these questions can then easily be organized to fit into one or more of the 4 boxes, which really helps focus the discussion with the executive teams that we work with typically. So this is how we would try to structure some of the thinking. And once you've done that, then you can start to talk about specific growth opportunities to effectively grow your top line and obviously your bottom line as well. So here what we're going to do is walk you through 3 examples, and each one talks about a different growth option or growth strategy that was put in place and that succeeded. For this first example, PVC Pipe Company, obviously the name of the company has been changed. I'll turn over to Doug Cartwright, and Doug, why don't you walk us through this experience that you had with Key Account Management.
Thank you, Christophe. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Terrific. The scenario that I wanted to share with the audience is based on my experience as a sales manager for this PVC plastics company that had a strategy to grow their top line through improving their share position with current products in a current market with their existing customer base. Now, historically, this company had gone to market with a one-size-fits-all strategy that really lacked the discipline on the lower end of their customer portfolio and failed to really take advantage of the leverage or use any leverage for the higher, larger volume customers in their distributor portfolio. And when I say it lacked the discipline, on the lower end, those customers were probably gaining more from the relationship than the PVC pipe company was. And on the higher end, with those larger companies, the PVC pipe company probably had the opportunity to leverage their volume position and leverage their full product offering if they brought more variables into the equation to help gain more share of the business with those large volume customers. But because of the one-size-fits-all strategy, the company really struggled to differentiate itself from other manufacturers within the wholesale industry, not only like manufacturers, but also non-competing manufacturers, because you're always competing for sales time of the wholesale salespeople. And they really, the PVC pipe company just kind of looked plain vanilla for the most part to the channel. So what it was determined was that it was important to take a look at the entire portfolio of customers and begin to stratify that group of customers. Looking first at the top tier group of national distributors, one of the things that the PVC pipe company found was that there was an inconsistent level of service due to the fact that their line was represented through independent sales representatives. So they didn't have a captive sales force out there. They had to rely upon an independent sales organization, which meant that they really needed to strengthen the strategy, yet make it easy for these independent sales representatives to implement. They also had a limited national sales and marketing coordination due to lack of national sales resources or resources that were focused on those large national accounts. And then finally, there was really no cross-functional approach to servicing these national distributors. So you basically had a handful of salespeople out there that were trying to cobble together a strategy for these large volume customers. But again, looking into the organization functionally, most of the folks in those functional areas, functional responsibilities, treated everybody in the distributor portfolio the same. So the decision was made to take action. The very first step was to rationalize that group of low volume distributors, and by basically giving them the opportunity or the option to move into an e-commerce environment. What this did, this enabled the company to free up some customer service resources so that they could redeploy these human resources up in the top end of the wholesale or the distributor portfolio of customers. So that was very much a helpful productivity gain and the first measure in the action taken. Next, there was a detailed analysis done of all of the larger volume customers, and particularly it was noticed that there were 3 key wholesale customers that were targeted for 10% share growth. 10% can be a big number. It's a double-digit number. But we noted that for that type of a share gain from the marketplace, it would contribute a $9 million top-line sales growth, which would actually be 15% growth to that specific PVC pipe company. So it was really felt that there was significant upside for a reasonable 10% share growth. And then finally, we developed a detailed share growth plan that included sales objectives. It mapped the client stakeholders or PVC pipe company managers to the corresponding manager within the key account wholesale distributor. And it also put together a plan for business building activities and identified and monitored key specific key performance indicators. So a very solid, detailed plan was put together and implemented with having identified 3 wholesale accounts and a 4th telemarketing telecom account. The results of this planning and implementation were that over an 18-month period, this PVC pipe company did realize significant sales increases with 2 of the 4 key accounts. One of those accounts, the telecom company, virtually doubled their sales over that 18-month period, and the second account actually grew by 30% over that same time frame. So by careful planning, by focusing resources on these key accounts in a cross-functional environment, the company was successful in gaining share with their current products within their current market. So a very, very successful initiative.
Thanks, Doug. That's great. Let me share a slightly different example. And this is a company that designed and manufactured student agendas. So the kind of a spiral-bound book that your middle school student would go pick up, and in which they would write down their homework assignments, if you're a lucky parent, or that they would use to plan their parties. This company made student agendas. That's what they were all about. When we got involved working with them, they had developed pretty lofty goals in terms of their vision going forward. And they had a long, they shared with us a long list of current descriptions of the company. So if you think about where we are today kind of thing, and then across from that they listed where they wanted to be in a few years. The one that I will highlight, because I think it does a good job summarizing their thinking when we started working with them. Today, clearly they were known as a product company, and the product happened to be the student agendas. Tomorrow, they wanted to become a content-focused, multimedia online tool and support for students and educators. So if you try to compare and contrast being a product company to becoming a multimedia content company providing online access to educators and students for valuable tools in helping the education of those students, I mean, that's a pretty significant departure from where they were today. Their challenge was that with those goals in mind and agreed with by the executive team, they needed short-term, while they were building towards those goals, they needed to increase their top line. So we started working with them to try to see what could be done over the next 18 to 36 months to really start to grow the company, to generate some revenues and some profits that could then be reinvested in helping to deliver this vision that they had established for themselves. The biggest challenge we had there is that historically the head of R&D had been a very strong member of the executive team. And they had a long tradition of developing, designing, coming out with new products. So this could be different formats for the agendas, different types of binding, hardcover, softcover, you name it, they would try it. So a very long history of coming up with new products. We started talking with them about different growth opportunities. We analyzed many different options. And one of the things we found out, which really went against conventional wisdom as we did the analysis, was that if you look at their new product development efforts, they were quite active in that regards. But the corollary to that, if you looked at their new product introduction efforts, so what happens once the new product gets rolled out in the field, those results were really very lackluster at best. What would happen is they would come out with new products. The field did not buy into the need for the product or didn't get sufficient training to know how to sell the new product, and so they would just revert back to selling the original product that they were comfortable with and that their customers were comfortable with. So the actual results showed that the impact of the new product development process were really not that great, and that really was not the best way to generate short-term revenue growth for them. What we did find is that there was a very, very small, it was a handful of people, business unit that focused on the higher education market in the USA. The bulk of this company's business was in the K through 12 segment of the market, so elementary, middle school, and high school, and very little in the higher ed market. And so really, because it was such a small piece of the business, the higher ed team really flew under the radar. They didn't get much attention from the executive team. When we talked with them, though, there's a few things we identified that struck us as pretty important. First of all, the product that was needed for the higher ed market was the core product that the company had. So there was no need to develop anything new. The second thing is that the sales force knew how to sell that product very, very well. The third thing was that from a geographic coverage point of view, the higher ed market was not in new geographies and therefore didn't require a lot of additional headcount in terms of sales force or sales support. The last piece, the fourth piece of this, was that if you think about a decent-sized middle school or high school, I have a daughter in high school, and the school here is probably 3,000 plus students. A decent-sized college or university will be many times that. She's currently applying to colleges, and some of the sizes are 30,000, 36,000 students. So if you land one of these colleges, the volume impact to the business was truly significant. We were able to convince management to steer a little bit away from the new product development focus and focus on this new market focus, trying to go after the higher education market space. We had a few very, very strong salespeople who had demonstrated some good results addressing and going after that market. And so we really we did a few ride-alongs with them to understand what made them successful selling to those colleges. One of the big differences between that and the other sales rep who focused on the high schools or middle school was that with high school and middle schools, if you call on the principal, then usually you've got the decision maker right there. If you're calling on the higher ed market, you typically would have to meet with and discuss potential sales of agendas to several folks. You might have department heads that garner enough students or student attention that they might want to get their own version of the student agenda. And so there's a lot more touch points within the higher ed market than there are in the traditional market for this company. But once that was taken care of and we trained the sales force to do that, it was a very easy ride for them, and they were able to generate some significant top-line growth addressing this new market for them. That gave them the leeway or the runway to then start to invest those results into developing their longer-term vision. So a little bit of a different example. This is selling your current products into new markets. And for the last example, I'm going to turn back over to Doug. So Doug, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about this example here.
Thank you, Christophe. Earlier in my career, I had the opportunity to work for a national payroll services company, and during my tenure, we had actually piloted a new tax filing service that was going to be offered to all new and all existing payroll service customers. Now, this tax filing service was available in two versions. One that provided the client with quarterly tax filing documentation that would be completed and ready for signature and filing. And the second option was provided all documentation, as in the previous example, but also the payroll company would assume all responsibilities and liabilities for making the client's payroll quarterly tax filings. This service was made available to all new prospects as well as existing payroll clients, as I had mentioned, and I was involved in the pilot phase. The action that we took, we went to our existing customers first and made sales appointments with each of the decision makers in the area of payroll with those existing customers. A presentation was completed regarding the premium tax filing service, and this was intended to give them a full understanding, a full scope of the how powerful this and productive this payroll tax filing service could be. And then we would also talk about the basic payroll tax filing service somewhat as a fallback position, but working very much with our existing customer base, presenting to them a new service that was being offered. The results were pretty impressive. Nearly all existing clients elected to take advantage of one of the new tax filing services, though initially less than half opted for the full tax filing package. However, after some time of being on that basic tax filing service, virtually all of those clients, and I would say within that first year, eventually opted for the full payroll tax filing service, which, as I mentioned earlier, was the level of service that included the electronic funds transfer and the liability for all federal and state payroll taxes. So it was largely successful. And in conclusion, the pilot program was rolled out across the entire U.S. I would say that the success of the program was really based on the payroll company's offering of a differentiated level of payroll tax filing service, which allowed the client a choice and to participate in tax filing in an environment that they were comfortable with, that really met their comfort zone. And once we had these folks in the program, the client's level of confidence continued to grow in the payroll company, and I think that was ultimately what enabled the company to deliver the full payroll tax filing services, again, to virtually all of those existing customers that we had presented it to. So it was a terrific experience. It became kind of a staple service for the payroll service company, and I'm sure today it continues to be probably their bread and butter when it comes to their payroll service offering.
That's great. Thanks, Doug. So these are the three examples we wanted to share with you. In terms of what do you do now? Where do you go from here? Basically, the first piece of advice, in the spirit of free advice, is that I would really encourage you to ensure that your organization, from top to bottom, is able to answer the questions we listed on our first page, which were the strategic considerations. Very important to do that before you move on. Secondly, lay out all the tactical self-assessment questions that we showed and start to organize them by quadrant for your company. And then thirdly, make sure you do your homework. One of the things that is very clear every time we do an engagement like this is the more members of management or members of the sales force we interview or spend time with, the more ideas we typically generate. And the ideas are really, the ideas and opinions are based on conventional wisdom or one specific example that stands out in somebody's mind. And what we find is that we're much better off letting the facts speak for themselves. So do your homework, do the analysis. Don't rely solely on what people tell you or what the couple examples are that people use to try to support an idea. Do the homework and do the math, and that's something that's well worth the time because it will allow you to make much, much better decisions. The last point is also we encourage our clients to reach out and get input from a broad set of people. Don't develop your growth strategy in the boardroom without talking to your customers, without talking to your sales force, without talking to your channel partners. Now, they're the people in the front lines. They know what they like, what they don't like. They also know a lot about your competition, and you would be surprised at how much they're willing to share when you ask appropriately some of the questions that you want to get the answers to. So this will be sort of the next steps that we would encourage for all of you. Before we wrap up, I think we have a couple more minutes. Before I try to answer a few of the questions that we've received during the webinar, I want to thank everybody for your time. Again, one key thing, if people are interested in receiving a copy of this presentation, if you would, just shoot me an email, and I will respond with the presentation attached. And any of the questions that we're not able to answer, I think we'll just take a couple right now. Anybody who has asked a question and we're not able to get to, I will send you an answer via email after the webinar. The first question we received from one of the listeners is for you, Doug. The question is, can you comment on some of the management challenges you faced when implementing some of the growth strategies you discussed?
Well, the first that comes to mind would be the initiative with the PVC pipe company. It was a kind of a daunting task. It was quite a bit of change for the organization. But I was very fortunate. We had a lot of help, and that help came from the very top, from the CEO, who very much stood behind the program and very much believed in what the program could deliver to the company. So his message out to his entire organization and his executive management team was to get behind this initiative, to look within your functional area and find ways that you can behave differently for this specific group of accounts, and then begin to put together a plan and a process to implement those changes, because it was the initiative was taken very seriously by the CEO. As he said on more than one occasion, this is not a program. This is not a promotion that goes away after 90 days. This is now the way that we do business. So having the CEO's support, I think, is critical to success when you're talking about a change process of that magnitude.
Great, thanks, Doug. I'll take a second question here. The question is, given that it takes a while to implement top-line initiatives, how do you know you are on a path to see benefits without waiting to actually see the sales dollars coming in? I'll try to give that one an answer. It's a very good question. When you're looking at cost-cutting efforts, it's fairly easy. The decisions are difficult to make, especially emotionally, but it's fairly easy to quantify the impact and to establish very clear timing of the impact. On the top-line side of things, it's much more difficult to establish a clear timeline, and it will take longer than, for example, closing a facility or laying off people. So the question is, how do you know you're on the right path? One of the things that we spend a lot of time doing once we have agreement that a certain growth avenue is the one we want to pursue is we spend a lot of time developing very specific tactical plans. And with those tactical plans, obviously there will be a forecast, so budgeted sales and gross profit. But with the tactical plans, we will establish and identify some key milestones and metrics. And so what that allows you to do is, on a monthly basis, you're able to sit down and say, have we reached each of the key milestones? And so this could be literally several months before a single sales rep hits the road with a new service offering, for example. But at least you've hit that milestone, which might be, do we have the service organization set up? Do we have the right marketing collateral material ready to go? Do we provide training to our salespeople? So once you have the technical plans laid out with a lot of detail, it then allows you to keep track of whether or not you are on the right track. So that's one of the ways that we try to make sure that we can assess success before actually seeing the sales dollars come in and adjust things along the way if necessary. So thank you for that question as well. That was a good question. I think at this point we've reached our 30 minutes. I want to thank everybody for your time. Again, if you want the presentation, just shoot me an email. And we look forward to hosting you on our next webinar. And with that, have a great weekend. And Doug, again, thank you for your participation. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.